really appreciate everyone coming onto the call today. And I'm delighted today to be joined by another Mark, who's got some fascinating insights and experience to share. So the way that we run these huddles, webinars, is I want to make sure that actually everyone's voice gets an opportunity to be heard. So please, whether you want that to be done electronically through chat or whether you want to come off mute and ask a question, I mean, both Mark and I will be very relaxed in terms of, and actually welcoming, in terms of turning this into a discussion rather than just the two of us talking around it. So really do encourage you to do that. And maybe just to sort of get us started, we just take the next slide, Lorna, and the one after that. So there's an awful lot of talk in the experience industry at the moment around journeys and managing journeys. And often when I think people talk about, or when I talk to people about journeys and managing journeys, they often tell me that it's technology. So I've gone out and I've bought a license to They Do or Smartly or Semantica or whoever you happen to be using around it. Actually, our view around it is that it's so much more than a technology, as in a lot of things in our lives. It's actually the opportunity to start to actively manage how your customers or your colleagues feel as they transact and as they go through the overall journey. And so for us, this is core to thinking of journeys as part of an operating system. It's how I act inside of a business. And so the way that I see that is to think of that as a strategy, as a choice in terms of how we operate. It's a discipline because we need to keep doing it time after time after time. And it's also a mindset or a mind shift. We're going to operate, we're going to think about life through the business of journeys rather than through sales or marketing or donors or supporters or whatever your business happens to be around it. And interestingly, what we see happening is when organizations really start to think about managing journeys, and actually what they see is three things. They start to be able to get a much greater grasp of how to drive top line growth, how to drive efficiency or take cost out of their operation, and also they start to identify those areas where there's just too much effort that's happening inside of an organization. So it feels too hard to be doing what it is that we should be doing. Either a colleague it's too difficult, it's sticky, it's cumbersome, it's full of friction, or a customer that's coming back and saying a similar thing around it. So as we dive into today's discussion, I'd just like to hold that in the context of managing journeys, thinking about that as an operating system rather than a technology, or this isn't mapping around it. Just think of this as a way of working to try and drive a set of business outcomes. So Mark, I'm delighted that you could join us today. And I know that the last couple of months have been a heck of a busy for you as you've moved house and you've changed roles and you've done a whole bunch of other things around it. But maybe it'd be great, because I know we've got folks from across the pond and across the various county borders, is actually just to share with them a little bit about yourself, a little bit about who Sky are, because there are some folks who won't know who Sky are out there, and then just think a little bit around sort of what does it mean to be delivering great customer or great employee experiences.
Sure, thank you, Mark, and thanks to everyone for joining, and hello. So as Mark says, it's been a bit of a hectic time. So I've been some 20 years across product management, customer experiences, in fact longer, but we'll go for 20 because that's a nice round number. And it's a lowish number unless you're young. So I've been in that space now, as I say, for 20 years across two companies recently. Virgin Media, which is a company owned by Liberty Global, which hopefully our US colleagues might be aware of. a cable company, and then more recently with Sky, who is the satellite, or traditionally the satellite provider of TV services in the UK. Most recently, I say recently, I was at Sky for 12 years, for quite a while, and my most recent role was the head of global streaming products, so focused on working with our partner, well, sister company in NBC Universal, delivering OTT services to customers across different markets, specifically UK, Ireland, Italy, and Germany. So I've been working on that, and that's what we do. And I think very much related to the customer journey, Sky's mission is about connecting people to the content that they love. And when you think about that, you think about streaming services, and I'm sure you'll have some form of streaming services, and I'm sure there are some services that you love and some services that you least love. But ultimately, how you get to your content, how quickly you get to your content, whether it be right from the point of subscription through to viewing and all the way through to possibly even leaving. So definitely that journey and understanding of that customer experience and how they interact with you as a service. The last part of your question, Mark. Sorry,
No, I was just thinking to myself as you talk about that. So millions of customers,
Yeah.
including me, I guess. I'm I'm there as one of your customers there. But what's fascinating around it is what I observe is you've had this ability to change how I act, to change how I think,
Yep.
around it. So, 20 years ago, I was probably pressing buttons on a TV going between 5 stations, or 4 stations, it might have been at the time. And now, I live in a world where you and your colleagues are actually just fundamentally changed how I consume content.
Yeah, it's been a massive in the streaming space, particularly. It's been a massive transformation in the last even 20 years. And as you say, I'm sure across multiple countries, that traditional sit in front of a TV, push some buttons. If you were lucky, you had a remote that had a little wire connected to your TV that was changing the channel for you, or you had to get up if you were in a poor family like me, and actually walk across the room to not just changing the way in which you consume content, but when and what you consume as well. How many people consume while traveling on the train? How many people are watching short form video through a TikTok or an Instagram or anything else like that? So the types of content that you're viewing, the way in which you're viewing, the stuff you get for free, the stuff that you subscribe to, it's a completely different landscape to what it was. And journey management is kind of critical in that transformation, right? Because before we go back, if we take the analogy and you go back and you just turned on the TV, you just consumed what you were given. Your choice was to change channel or not watch TV. Whereas now you have so much choice. And part of our journey management challenge was the emotional connection that people have to their content. People are making emotional choices before they even integrate with anything. People are deciding. So a journey equally can be off-putting. It can detract from a service that you're offering and can have an influence on the customer as much as the service itself.
I guess that's an interesting point, that emotional connection. And Jay, I'm going to come back to you with the Alzheimer's, because we often think of commercial organizations very different from not-for-profits, but that emotional connection, that you're looking to make, whether it's with the people that you care and support, or whether it's people who support you, the donors, and supporters that you've got. I'm sure that's a key point for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think for us, it's getting that balance right, because we've got nothing to offer people other than so yeah. My team are very much support focused, and yeah, we have nothing to offer other than feel good factor of thank you, and just making sure it's genuine. So yeah, it's tricky. Sorry, I don't know if you asked me a question there, Mark, but I just heard my name. I was like, oh, I'm going to jump in. Sorry.
No, it's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that actually, people are jumping in and sharing their perspectives around it. Because for me, when you start to look at journeys, and we can all map, if I think about a customer journey, all that from, awareness through to getting smart around a decision, through making that decision, through using a product, through using that product, through I need help, or I have a query, I have a question, all the way through to renewal, extension, leave, whatever, that happens to be. Then whether I'm in any commercial organization or any not-for-profit organization, I've got a very similar journey around it. And, as Mark talked, one of the interesting things that's going on around that for me is actually to start to think about, okay, how do I actively manage it? Because not every point in that journey actually matters. There are key moments that are much more important to customers, to employees, to supporters, to clients, to patients, to whoever you have, than others. And so as we start to think around that, and thinking about, some of those creating emotional moments, creating those moments that really matter, that maybe are standout signature points for you, then Mark, maybe just coming back to yourself, if you start to think about that journey, and obviously everybody wants to have an exceptional journey from start to finish, but actually I think the work that you did at Sky and at Now was very focused on, we understand the key moments that we need to get after, and these are the points where we need to really make sure that it works. So you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in any journey, right, it's important to make sure that it's robust, full stop. But there are critical moments for Sky and for the Now OTT streaming products that were absolutely critical, right? So acquisition being one. You had to make sure that your acquisition journeys are absolutely spot on, right? And because if that failed, you lose it. Then you've got in terms of how quickly, how easy it is to get access to the services that you're actually subscribing. We're like any other, or an application on multiple platforms, whether that be connected TVs, mobile devices, whatever it might be. So however they're going to interact and engage with those products and services, that has to be robust. So app reliability across a multitude of different platforms in that SaaS world. I mean, I don't know how many people are working in particularly mobile technologies, but they're a real challenge. Right? No one place is the same. There are so much out of your control, not least as I've demonstrated broadband and Wi-Fi connection. Right, can't control that, but how you manage that and how you work with the customer, how you talk to the customer, how you message the customer during those periods are really, really critical points. In streaming, the quality of your streaming has to be spot on. If it's bad streaming, they're paying a lot of money for something that they can't view. The only reason they're there is to view something in a streaming product. So if that's not right, then that part of the journey breaks down. You're going to lose customers. And then equally, any interaction with your customer services teams are absolutely critical as well, making sure that they're well trained and they're well informed, and that maybe they're cross-functional, not just focused on streaming. Maybe they can cover broadband as well, so people aren't being moved around from pillar to post. These are all critical moments. These, if not got right, will create frustrations in the customer, and those journeys break down. And it doesn't matter if one part of that journey works well, if another part doesn't, then the whole experience for the customer is poor straight away. So those are really, really, really important things to focus on.
It's interesting, Mark, as you talk. I mean, if I think about, that you talked about that point of acquisition. You've worked so hard as a business to attract, convince, and persuade somebody to decide that they're going to be with you. Yeah.
Yep.
And then at that point, what is it that you do? Well, very often things move from sales to operations, and your poor customer sits there going, what just happened? Yeah. This was a wonderful experience up to that point, and now I've got to wait 3 days for my service to get enabled, or 5 days.
It's sometimes the smallest things. Ironic that my broadband has had an up and down moment. I just had new broadband installed. With a local provider, so not a big UK player, very localized provider.
Yeah.
Fantastic, competitive, brilliant, can offer me services that actually some of the bigger boys can't. Brilliant, off we go. I had it installed the other day, but I'd had no communication from the point of booking to the point of installation. Now, bearing in mind, there's guys turning up, digging up the road, needing access to my property, and I heard nothing. And I just had to call them that morning. I had a slot, all morning slot, as you tend to get, and I had nothing. And the doubt in me started to create those emotions where I actually contacted and said, "Hey, listen, it's all fine. I've been up for the last hour and a half waiting for you to knock on the door. I've had nothing. You are coming, aren't you?" Whereas other services might just send you that affirmation, that text message, that email that might say, "Don't forget, we're coming to see you." And it's just those small parts, things that aren't necessarily the functional elements of the journey that are important, but those added parts to that journey, which actually gives you reaffirms things for customers, makes sure that they feel informed during that process. So it's not always, when you're thinking about the journey, it's not always just these functional elements that you know of. It's the bits that can wrap around it. And I have to say, and I know we're moving slightly on to challenges and solutions, is that in my experience, I could spend as much as 90% of my time thinking about the failing of the journey. How do I manage that customer? How do I inform that customer? Happy Paths are brilliant. If all my job was writing Happy Paths, I'd be living the dream. Honestly, it's so easy. And most people can do it. You know the experience that you want to provide. But in the point of failure, at what point of failure, and how can you, for example, get the customer to self-serve? As I say, in our world, when you've got connectivity challenges, really you want the customer to be trying self-serving because it might be with a different broadband provider and not yourself. So, can you check your broadband? Have you checked that? Have you checked that? How many devices have you got connected? What's going on at the moment? Can you connect to your router but no broadband service? So giving them as much information as they possibly can to serve. One, helps obviously from an operational cost perspective, but two, customers tend to be more satisfied if they can solve the problem themselves. But then, if they can't, where's the number to call? How can I get in contact? Do I want to do it via WhatsApp? Do I want to do it? Some of the most frustrating services are, I just want to talk to someone, and there's no way to talk to someone. I can't find a number. I have to go into ChatGPT because searching the internet doesn't give me anything either now anyway. So, just all of those things around those functional parts of your journey need a lot of thought, care, and attention, because you hope not needed, but when they are, they can again have such an influence on the customer experience.
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts that I have, and we're talking about customer, but I mean, organizations acquire talent. Yeah. So you think about new employee, yeah, a new colleague coming to work, and what's their first day actually like? Yeah. I mean, are they, are they fully equipped? Are they welcome? Do they have everything that they need? Yeah, around it, so they can make a valuable contribution. Yeah, around it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we think about employee experiences, employee experiences are somewhat overlooked, right? You're employed, you do a job, you're there perhaps to serve a customer, serve the customer, do the best job you can with the customer. But exactly to your point, Mark, how do I onboard you? Is the equipment ready? Is there someone to guide me through? Is there someone to explain the systems I've got to use? How does it work around here? I mean, even within companies. So Sky's a large organization. I've managed to move across different parts of the product organization throughout my time there. And I remember one particular transition. It was a very separate part of the product organization, albeit under the same umbrella. But because I'd been there for so long, everyone just assumed I knew everything. Right? But they did things slightly differently to the way that I'd been doing them for the last 6-7 years, whatever it was. So understanding, making sure that your employee experiences are well documented, well understood, well supported is a critical point as well. We talk about losing customers. Losing staff is equally as expensive for a business as it is to lose a customer. So yeah, employee experiences.
Sorry, Mark, I want to just come to, there's a couple of comments in the chat that I think are great to bring in at this point. Yeah, I mean, there's a piece from Aaron. You've asked a question around at what point does the emotional connection push somebody away rather than draw them to the product? Yeah. And what it sparked in my mind was I got off a plane recently, and I happen to be a loyal customer of British Airways. Yeah. And I got sent a "How was your flight?" survey. And I thought, well, that's a nice thing to do. You're interested in my opinion, yeah, around it. The problem was the flight was 90 minutes late. And so at that point, what I would expect from somebody is that they understand that that's the situation that's happened. They understand that I'm late, and instead of just pushing, yeah, a survey to a customer because I want a piece of feedback, yeah, and they know that I'm a loyal customer, so I will give them feedback around it, is actually to recognize the situation, yeah, and recognize that actually at that point in time, there's a different need that I have. And I think that's when that emotional connection, if you don't demonstrate, Aaron, that actually you understand, and Mark talked about people falling off the happy path, but it's at that point, if you just assume, yeah, and actually you've got the information to know that something else is happening, then I think your customers have every right to expect that actually you should act differently. Yeah.
It's a really valid point, Mark. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche that it takes a lifetime to earn the trust of someone, but it takes a moment to break it. And I think this is a great example of that. Whether it's a new, maybe some loyalty will allow you a little bit of leeway. Maybe you'll push back a little bit. But if it's a new service that you've tried, for example, I had a flight experience myself. I had to travel to Vienna for business. And I decided to go with Austrian Airlines. Don't know why, never been with them, decided to do that. Absolutely fine, great, brilliant, lovely. They give you some food, it's a short haul flight compared to BA, they make you get your peanuts at the airport. However, on the way back, my flight got delayed, and it got moved, and then it got cancelled. And they literally handed me a piece of paper and said, we'll message you with your flight tomorrow morning. I said, okay, so where are you putting me up then? Oh, no, we're not. You've got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say that I didn't return on Austrian. I managed to secure another flight by BA, and I've never been on Austrian ever since, particularly after an extremely rough night in the airport because all of the one hotel next to the airport was fully booked.
Yeah.
And also, losing our contact lens in the middle of all of it, I was not a happy bunny. And particularly when I found out that they were going to get me back to London via Helsinki the following day. So I've never been back with it. And that's not to say that the Austrian don't do great flights, by the way. I'm sure they do. But it's just that one experience that has put me off. So it doesn't really take much to turn your customer off. And it can happen at any point. I've been with services where I'm trying to buy them and I'm struggling. They won't take my payment. I'm like, what's that all about? How can you not take my payment? So yeah, it doesn't take a lot to disgruntle the customer, and therefore future emotional choices are impacted.
I want to stay with this just bit around emotion because I think it's a really interesting aspect. Yeah, because I mean, Jenny, you shared, you're managing a frontline team or a customer-facing team. Yeah, and in a number of the conversations, I mean, they can be short, but that there's so much that people need to be able to do in that point, yeah. And one of the challenges that I see around it is, well, two of the things that I see is, if you can demonstrate you know me, that's a really important aspect, yeah. And I think the other bit is, but also don't assume what I need. Yeah. So, have the courtesy or the time or whatever to just listen and understand. Yeah. Before you act. But Jenny, I mean, what do you see happening in that environment?
I think oh God, sorry.
Go on, Jenny. No, it's okay. Jump in.
I think I've just completely lost my train of thought. It is those really subtle moments, and I think for my area, we might have someone that has been supporting the organisation for the space of 10 years, and they have one phone call with the team, and it's that 2 minutes is the only interaction they might ever have with the organisation. So like we kind of call it the golden moment. And every single thing in that call is critical, even down to the order in which we take someone's details. So as an example, we had to have a bit of a mind shift in the team where if you make a phone call, change your address, it's a very simple admin request. And being in customer service, you want to help that person. So the first thing you're going to do is ask for their postcode to find their details, because you want to help them. You want to help them really quickly. But by doing so, you completely take out the personalisation and the individualisation of that call. So it's all around humanising it before you support. So it's like really subtle mind shifts of like, okay, let's take your name. And how's the move gone? Are you settling in well? Oh, wicked. Yeah, we can take your details. I'll help you, but let me get to know you a little bit first. So yeah, we found that's pretty important in my space.
I would argue, Jenny, in any space. Yeah. that's important. And I see Sarah jumping in with love hearts. Yeah, and Mark's nodded as well. Yeah, so
it's really valuable. It reminds me of an experience when my parents passed away and I had to contact their bank. The way they handled it was fantastic. It was brilliant. They understood the emotions that I was going through, completely unrelated to the fact that I then had to take care of all this administration. And I remember it because I remember having to ring other people and not being treated as well. So just in those moments, understanding your context is really, 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 really valuable. In some spaces, you know, this is where AI potentially can support that journey as well, I think. I'm not saying it should take it over, but I think it can support if it can feed information to a call agent because it understands the number that's calling or whatever it might be, and speed that up so that the person at the end of the phone can be more human. I think that's something really valuable and interesting as well.
Barry, I think I mean, just to bring your voice into the call as well. Absolutely, I think customers' expectations have changed. Yeah, around it. One of the things that I find interesting when you start to think about journeys and actively managing journeys is that customers no longer compare you. They don't compare you to your competitors. They compare you to similar experiences they've had elsewhere. So, you know, when you ring customer service, for example, and if you want to speak to customer service, you know, people like Spotify are outstanding, yeah, in this space. Okay. And as soon as you've had one of those exceptional experiences, then that sets the benchmark for, well, I just assume that everybody else, yeah, should be able to do that, yeah, and provide that same activity. And, you know, we could all look at these organizations and go, well, that's unfair, isn't it? Yeah. But that's the reality, yeah, I think, of what's happening. And so it becomes quite difficult to then go, you know, if you create those, if your customers are having those great experiences in different parts of their lives, then what does that mean in terms of the expectations that they start to have of you, yeah, around it? I think the second aspect, and interested in your view around this, Barry, as well, is that I think that what's happening is, I also think when an organization succeed around managing journeys, they pick certain moments that matter. And so let's think about Spotify as an example again. What Spotify did brilliantly, in my view, was actually they understood that going from free to premium was a big profit driver for them, a big revenue driver for them. Yeah. So what they did was they focused on how do we make that journey as easy, as simple as possible in a way that customers value. And what's fascinating was that actually what they saw was a significant conversion rate increase because they deliberately designed that experience, yeah, in a way that their customers were going to value. And I think that's just an interesting aspect of seeing when I start to understand a particular moment that's really valuable for customers, but also valuable for us as a business. Yeah, if we design that in a particular way, then actually that makes a huge difference around it. Yeah. But Barry, I mean, just your view, or thoughts around this.
Yeah, I agree, Mark. I think as customers, you say, you know, expecting slightly more, I guess, in what we would call the norm, right? Like you expect to know who I am, my account number, what my last transaction was, when I last interacted with you. So then you're trying to aim for where in the journey can I maybe do something that the customer isn't slightly expecting at some point. And the example I'll give is in a previous role, we used to do smart meter exchanges.
Okay.
And we used to tie from the contact center side of the business, the guys who were booking the appointments, you know, you'd ask the normal stuff, do you have a dog on site? Do you have any parking, all of that kind of stuff. If the customer said he'd have a dog, we'd feed that to the engineer who's going out on site so that they could take, you know, they'd have dog treats on their van, you know, and it'd be like, oh, you know, we know that you've got a dog, we've brought some treats with us. And it could be something as simple, you know, that meter exchange was great, but, you know, the fact that you remembered they had a dog and you brought some treats for him and you got on with him was great. And it's those types of things then that the customer starts talking about. They don't talk about the meter exchange, or they don't talk about, you know, I couldn't get through to get the appointment booked very easy, or they were 10, 15 minutes late. They bring that piece of, you know, what really wowed me. And I think that goes to Jenny's point around the, you know, you just calling in for a 2-minute telephone line, you know, just change my telephone because I've just moved house. Oh, amazing. And, you know, how was the house move? How's it going? How are you settling in? And I think there's those types of journey mapping that we can look at to go, you know, and almost look to, if it was me, what would I expect? So again, we do house sales and, you know, private people buying houses and stuff. Just a simple card, you know, we know when the house sale's gone through, a simple card that could be sent that says congratulations on finalizing your house sale, because we know we did the foreign exchange for you. Customer's not expecting a card from us to say congratulations on your new home, but we can get that out the door, we can get it done. There's that how we wow, and it's about mapping that, to your point, I guess, across the whole journey, no matter where that is and what that looks like.
So that's exactly the point there, Barry. Yeah, it's taking that the entirety of the journey and actually understanding that. I mean, the examples you gave were something that came up in customer service, and we're feeding that into operations. We're feeding it into engineering. Okay. All too often, what I observe is that people take a look at journeys and they look at specific stages or parts of a journey, yeah, because that's what applies to me in customer service. Whereas when you start to think looking left and right, yeah, around that, then you start to see a whole series of opportunities that are there. And, you know, in the example you gave, that person doesn't care about having their smart meter replaced. I mean, that's not, yeah. I mean, that's not something I'm going to talk to everybody about and write home about and whatever else. Yeah, it's just a chore that I need to get done. But the fact that somebody thoughtfully brought treats for my dog, yeah, I'm going to tell 100 people about that. Yeah, I mean, I can see Lorna thinking just now, because Lorna loves dogs. Yeah, I can see Lorna thinking just now about how can I change my smart meter, because the dogs will have a great time around it. But you know, it's just, it really is that sort of thing. And how often do we look, you know, whether it's in fundraising, yeah, do we look left and right to actually understand what's going on, or in the protection business that you're in, Aaron? Yeah, I mean, you know, looking left and right across that, yeah, around it. I just think there's so many opportunities to actually start to manage that journey and have a fundamentally different approach. But Mark, bring your voice back in, yeah? I mean, because, you know, you've done a lot of this work, yeah?
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear, because like some of what Barry and Jenny are talking about are the moments of delight that we talk about in the journey. But equally, the challenges that are faced, Mark, you nailed it straight on, right? Look, Sky's a very large organization, right? It's got a massive marketing department, it's the operations teams and content teams and all the rest of it. And they're driven by their own objectives and results that they've got to achieve. And it's very difficult sometimes for them to understand the impact that they have 2 or 3 steps down in that journey. So it can be quite a challenge in order to share that information to make sure that everyone is doing it. And I wouldn't, you know, hand on heart say they do it massively successfully, but there are other occasions where they really, really do. But within those pillars, if you like, there are moments of delight. So there's a service that Sky offers in the customer care group where people can opt in. So very much to what Jenny was saying, where a call advisor will ring up a customer, normally of an elderly disposition, and just chat to them. It's got nothing to do with service. It's got nothing to do with trying to sell them anything. It's just that they know that they're on their own, and they just give them a call. They're a Sky customer, and they give them a call and say, hey, how are you? They know their name, they have a conversation, because that might be the only contact that that person has that week with any person, potentially. And that's just value added on top of the service that you do. It's not related anything to a specific journey, creates that emotional connection with the brand because they're going out of their way to have a call. There's so much value in it. It drives no money necessarily, not directly. Indirectly, you could talk about loyalty, for example, but it's just about serving the customer. But seeing that consistently across all of those pillars, seeing how you create those moments of delight in every space and how you're sharing that information across those spaces, that's a real challenge. That is a real challenge. And I find from what I see in larger organizations, because everyone is, I'd like to think it's easier in a smaller organization, but at the end of the day, people, unless they are passionate, unless it's part of their remit, people turn up, they do their work, and then they stay kind of almost within the boundaries of what they're trying to do. So it's a really interesting point, and I think you're absolutely right, Mike. There's so much opportunity just to add those little elements that can create such a better journey for people. And from a business perspective, it becomes a point of differentiation. You're doing it, your competitors are not. It's really valuable, but not many people are doing it, I don't think.
Yeah, certainly not many people are looking at it across the entirety of the journey. And as you say, Mark, I think in many larger organizations, people get, I don't know whether it's fearful or they think it's too complex, but I work on a simple principle that says that folks can only remember the number of fingers that they have in one hand. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, don't pick 25 moments that matter. Pick 5 or fewer.
Yeah.
Okay. And focus on those ones.
Yeah.
And do something about those. Yeah. And then if you need to pick another 5, go ahead. Yeah. Go pick another 5 around it. Yeah. But I mean, it's that sort of just keep this really practical and applied. Yeah. And think about those key situations that makes a real difference.
Well, it reminds me, I'm a product person, that's what I do, and there's lots of methodologies by which I can do product, right? But one of them is an agile methodology, and the idea is that you iterate, quickly turn around and you iterate, and it's exactly that idea. If we think about it too much, there'll be 25 things you want to do, but actually just do the first iteration of the first thing, right? And it may not have the big wow factor, but it's the building block. You go back and you iterate on it, and you go back and you iterate on it, and you keep moving quickly, and then you suddenly, to your point, those 5 things have become 7 things, have become 10 things. And the other thing that we're trying to do as well to understand the things that work is look at the feedback, look at the data wherever we can to understand the impact that that's having. If it doesn't work, throw it away. You've got to embrace the idea that you might fail. So if it doesn't work, throw it away, but you then move on to the next one. But it is a mindset. It's an organizational mindset, and you have to remove the fear of failure. And the beauty of that approach, or even the idea of A/B testing. So let's try this with this set of customers, or let's try that with that set of customers. Which one works better? By investing in those ideas, you're not overly investing in the big idea, ordering 20 million key fobs that no one wants suddenly. You're just trying out the ideas, keep trying, keep testing, keep evaluating, see which work, and then move in that direction and throw away the things that don't. So, there are ways by which organizations can understand and try these things out, but it doesn't require necessarily investment, but it does require someone to say, come on, let's go for this. Let's look at this. Let's try this point in this journey. Why is the fallout rate so high? Why are customers bailing out of our journey at this point? What's going wrong here? Let's go and have a look at that. How can we make that better? That's working really well, but it could work better. How can we add delight? How can we move that forward? So, you've got to keep looking, you've got to keep understanding, and you've got to have advocates within your organization that make that happen.
Yeah, I'm just writing, scribbling a couple of notes here, because every time I have one of these conversations, I'm also learning as well. So it's great. Just a couple of things that are jumping out at me. This aspect around managing a journey Yeah, I mean, looking at the totality of that journey and actively looking left and right. Yeah, so I mean, keep looking, keep being interested in it is a really, really important element. I think there's a second thing around that pilot. Yeah, I mean, just try something. Okay, I mean, test. Yeah, learn from it, do something. Yeah, see the impact associated with it. Yeah, and most customers, if you say to them, look, we're trying something here, yeah, we'd like you to be part of it, lots of people want to lean in, yeah, and be part of that around it. I think that we talked about those moments that matter. They're often signature moments that are we really satisfy somebody's needs, and we very often satisfy the needs from a product perspective, but not the needs from an emotional perspective. Yeah. So picking those key moments and understanding that actually these are the ones that I need to get right. Yeah. And let's start with those 5. Yeah. And then we'll pick some more after that when we've got those that are there. That's important. I guess the other or another aspect that I see in this is always keep it grounded in what matters for the business. So if this is about driving revenue, taking cost out, taking effort out, yeah, then really think about, so how is it, yeah, that an improvement in this particular stage or this particular moment really matters. But Mark, was there anything else you wanted to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah,
I know you've got some scars and stars from having done this. Yeah.
Yeah, quite a few. There's probably a couple of things. One of the ones, again, mainly from my product standpoint, is the way to find out is actually talk to the customers. Go out, talk to the customers, find out what they love, find out what they hate. That is the most relevant and invaluable feedback anybody can get. Talk to the people who are using what you're doing and find out what they like about it and what they don't like about it. And I don't mean 10 people, and I don't mean, your partner or your friends or your family. You've got to go out and really understand. And I think one of the things that I used to sort of get a lot of external companies to help them with their customer research, and it got called out by a senior exec at one point quite rightly. It's like, why am I listening to 10 people in London when I am a national service? So if you are more national, it's important to get those views that really do represent your customer base, not just a small portion in an affluent part of the country potentially. I think the other thing I would add, and again, it comes very much from the software development agile principle, really, but also very much a product thing, which is get everyone in the room to start with. So I think where I see good ideas and good customer journeys failing is when people have gone off, done their thing, come to bring it to implement it, and they haven't engaged anyone else, and then everyone else goes no, and then it all falls down. So at the very, very beginning, the earliest opportunity, get everyone in the room, anyone you can think of. It doesn't matter about their seniority. It could be the cleaner, it can be the CEO, but get everyone in the room and talk that through. And particularly, I find, a lot of what I've done at Sky, I've had a particular focus that I need to do. But what I'm trying to do is influence the journey before me. I'm trying to influence the journey after me because I want it to be a cohesive customer experience. I want it to feel like it's one thing and not disparate things that people are doing. So as much as one of the rationales for getting the people in the room, one, you get to talk about what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve, but two, as well, you're inviting them to think about their journeys. You're trying to influence that and make sure that it's a cohesive thing. So, and that goes throughout the entire piece when we talk about piloting and testing, all the way through those iterations. Constant communication, transparency, and getting the right people in the room is really, really powerful. And it will be far more successful as a result of it as well.
Thanks, Mark. And there's a saying, I think, that experience is a team sport. Yeah, which is what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, they need to have people. Yeah.
The number of times that I don't profess to know it all, I really don't. I'm very honoured to have been invited to this conversation today. But I love an idea coming from somewhere that it's like, oh, yeah, of course that makes sense. Why didn't I think about it? Let's try and let's work that through. Let's see how that could work. Lots of people have ideas, right? And the more broadly that you do that, you can suddenly get a nugget from nowhere. It's brilliant.
All right. I cannot believe that I've blinked and an hour has gone past. Yes, but that's where we are. Look, just a couple of things. Firstly, Mark, my thanks. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, yeah, some insights from your perspective around that, and thanks to others that contributed to the conversation as well. That's really important. Just I wanted to share a couple of thoughts. If we just take the next slide, Lorna, then one of the things to think about is, do you actually understand how good, bad, or indifferent your journeys are? Okay. And often what we see is that you described as a happy path, Mark. People might have just mapped something, but they've not really understand what does it take to really make this journey come to life. What do we need to have inside of the organization to be able to do this? And it's so much more than a technology, and it's so much more than we've mapped it. It's all the capabilities that sit around that. So if that's something that's of interest to you, then just give us a shout and we can have a conversation around that. But managing journeys becomes really, really important, because what we see is that organizations that do that, they end up with a 30% takeout in cost. They can end up with a 50 to 100% increase in terms of revenues, and actually effort falls out of the system as well. So a huge impact in terms of what is capable, what you can do that's there around it. Lorna, was there anything else that we needed to cover today before I thank everybody?
Where's that learning community?
Yeah.
Which is private. We have a group over 200 and in a community, private community. People can ask questions, share, just as we're doing in here. And I'll put a link in the chat to that in there, but people can find out more there, and I'll be sharing the key takeaways in there. And to everybody following this, to your emails.
Okay. Thank you. As I said, Mark, thank you for, your passion and energy around this topic is infectious. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks to those who contributed, in the conversation as well. We'll share some thoughts around this. I would just encourage everyone that this is not the last conversation. This is the first of many conversations, because there's insights, there's a couple of things that spark. If you take one or two things away and go, I could do something about that, then that's great, and we commit to keep fostering these conversations around it. But wherever you are, whether it's the morning or the afternoon,